What's up, everyone? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel, and it is time for my thoughts on the AP Top 25 poll heading into Week 12 of the 2022 college football season. Looking back to last weekend, what a weekend it was. The first couple weeks of November have been really big surprises. I mean, honestly, when it comes to November, we've seen some surprises throughout, November, and the college football playoff rankings really shaped up to be some big changes. And now the AP Top 25 poll, there's going to be some changes here to the AP Top 25 poll here from this weekend. And like I said, the rankings came out yesterday, so we're going to see what the rankings will look like. I mean, basically, this is based off of how the teams played. And there is a lot of changes to the AP Top 25 when we go into it here. So let's jump right into it here with my thoughts on the AP Top 25 poll. And I'll give you my best, honest reaction to it. And also, if there is anything wrong with it, or, of course, if there's anything right with it. So, we'll start from on the bottom and work our way to the top here in the AP Top 25 poll. Let's start from 21 through 25. Oregon State and Oklahoma State are back in the top 25 here. These are two teams that are coming off some tough losses. Oregon State obviously losing to Washington. Of course, Washington beat, Oregon this weekend. And Oregon State's back in there after losing that game, so that really doesn't surprise me. Oklahoma State, the same thing. They're coming off, some tough losses in the Big 12, but they get back in here into the AP poll. So Oregon State and Oklahoma State are kind of similar to each other, losing some games and then repeating back in their, last game. So pretty much, no big surprise here. I mean, do I agree on this one? I kind of do, because, I don't think there was any other teams out there that could possibly pass Oregon State or Oklahoma State in the top 25. So both of these teams are back in, the top 25 here. Coastal Carolina, number 23. They're ranked in the AP poll for the first time this season. This is a team that, everybody's been kind of sleeping on in, the Group of Five conference here. And Coastal Carolina, pretty much, one of the top teams in the Sun Belt. I mean, honestly, they are the top team in the Sun Belt. Probably the Sun Belt champion, perhaps, this upcoming season, and also, for the rest of the year. This is a team that's 9-1. The record really doesn't matter, but this team has been playing solid football ever since, the beginning of the season. And Coastal Carolina is a team that you don't want to sleep on. This is a team that kind of could get ranked in the college football playoff rankings, which comes out tomorrow. So, I mean, honestly, I'm going to make a video on that on Wednesday and give you my honest thoughts about the college football playoff rankings. But Coastal Carolina is a team that I think can get ranked in the top 25 in the playoff rankings. I will just see how it goes. I mean, I think with the teams that lost this weekend, I think, you could put Coastal Carolina in that conversation. Cincinnati at number 22, back in the top 25. This is another team that I think can make, in the college football playoff rankings. I know Cincinnati still has to play Tulane on that schedule, but I think they can win that game. I mean, the good news for Cincinnati is that, they don't have to win against UCF just to, be in that American Athletic Conference Championship game. And I think Cincinnati can make it to the American Athletic Conference Championship, and, if they beat Tulane, they can get a rematch there with UCF. And they can honestly win that game. That's like a revenge game for Cincinnati, and I think they would win it. So I think Cincinnati will be the American Athletic Champion by the end of the year. And I think they could possibly go to New Year's Six bowl game. Tulane at number 21, just talked about them. Tulane is a team that, is coming off a heartbreaking loss to UCF. I had Tulane winning that game. But again, UCF really proved me wrong. And this Tulane team, I'm not really counting them out of the playoff rankings. I mean, they'll probably be out of it by now, but I think, they could probably still somewhere be, 21 through 25 range perhaps in the college football playoff rankings. But Tulane can still make it to the American Athletic Championship. They just need that win over Cincinnati, and I think they can win out the rest of their games, and they'll get a possible rematch with UCF. And if Tulane or Cincinnati makes it in, these are two teams that just lost to UCF. I think they can get revenge, either if it's Cincinnati or Tulane, in the American Championship game. So that's 21 through 25. Let's go now 16 through 20. Big changes to here from 16 through 20. Florida State was ranked number 23 last weekend. So they move up 3 spots. Took care of business against Syracuse. Pretty much, they're now 7-3. A lot of things have turned around for this Florida State team. this is a team that I was really high on coming into this season, and they have really impressed me a lot. So I'm pretty impressed with the Seminoles. They still have to play Florida on the schedule, which will be tough, but I think they can really probably win out and go 9-3. But if they lose to Florida, that could, be maybe 8-4 to finish out the year for Florida State. But an excellent turnaround for this Mike Norvell team. Kansas State at number 19. This is another team that is battling for a Big 12 championship spot. I mean, they repeated against Baylor. I mean, they won on the road. And, that really just surprised me. I thought Kansas State would have had a really kind of a tougher matchup in this game against Baylor. I know they lost to Texas, but, we've seen time and time again in the Big 12. Like, these teams lose the following week, and then also they win the following week. So, I mean, that's pretty much makes sense to me that, Kansas State is still in a position to win the Big 12. I mean, they still can probably get a rematch with TCU. But, there are 4 teams fighting for that Big 12 spot. There are 4 teams, battling for TCU. I mean, you got Kansas State, you got Baylor, you got Texas, and Oklahoma State. Those are all the teams that are battling for that Big 12 championship spot. But who will TCU play? We'll just have to find out. We got a couple weeks left of the 2022 season. Notre Dame, another team that is coming off, another impressive win, but, it was a tough game against Navy. I mean, they held their own there at the end of the minutes, but this is a Notre Dame team that has gotten better ever since, that win over Syracuse, and, they beat Clemson badly this past weekend, so Notre Dame, I think, should be, a little bit higher in the playoff rankings, perhaps, coming into this, Tuesday's rankings, but like I said, this is a team that has gotten better each and every single game. UCF at number 17, they're at the top of the American Conference right now. And like I said, I've been getting used to studying more of these, American athletic teams and all these group of 5 teams like Cincinnati, UCF, Tulane, Liberty, which Liberty lost to UConn. And speaking of the American athletic, how about Liberty losing to UConn? UConn is bowl eligible. I mean, who saw that coming? I mean, UConn is bowl eligible for the first time in a while. Kansas is bowl eligible. Some of these teams have just really surprised me. And I might make a video on that, when the season is over, like the most surprising teams, from 2022. But UCF, talking about them, they are first at the American Athletic. I mean, they defeated Cincinnati already. Now they defeated, of course, Tulane. So they're pretty much heading into the American, championship. This UCF team is starting to look like the team that they were used to be. I mean, when Josh Heupel was still down there, I mean, this defense is pretty good on both sides of the ball. I know they gave up a lot of points, though, against Tulane. But I think, whoever they met, like I said, whoever they meet in the American Championship, I think they're going to get revenge on this team. UCF will probably lose the American Championship, but we never know. I mean, UCF could be a lot of a dangerous team in the American. UCLA at number 16, a tough loss to Arizona at home. Their playoff hopes are pretty much over. Maybe their Pac-12 championship hopes are not over. I think, this team could still win the Pac-12, but, they still have to play USC on the schedule. And, that it's not really a big game, to be honest now. I mean, I think both of those teams are now fighting for that Pac-12 championship spot, but maybe UCLA can pull off an upset there. Maybe they can, and USC can ruin their, college football playoff hopes, and also maybe their Pac-12 hopes. But the Pac-12 race is wide open. I mean, you got Oregon, you got UCLA, you got USC, you got Utah, all battling for that Pac-12 first place spot and for those top 2 spots in the Pac-12 championship. That's 16 through 20. Pretty much, a change there. Let's go 11 through 15 now. Washington at number 15, a huge win over Oregon. This is a team that keeps getting better and better each and every single week. I mean, ever since that Oregon State win, a couple weeks ago, now they come with back-to-back wins against Oregon teams. And Washington pulled off a huge road win against Oregon. And like I said, it was a rival game, and you never know what could happen in that one. And I knew Washington would keep it close, but I thought Oregon would pull away in the second half. But Washington was able to pull off a big upset there. And usually when, like I said, when it's November time, it's always, about the upsets. It's always about the surprising teams, and also the underdog teams really shocking these top, 25 teams in the college football playoff race. But this is the AP poll, so it's not really important. Ole Miss at number 14. Ole Miss's game against Alabama, yes, they choke, But, really a game that, they could have won. But, they're out of that, SEC West championship, caliber now. And, they're not going to get a rematch with LSU. I mean, if LSU loses down the stretch, I mean, that could help them. But, if they are tied, with a similar 10-2 record, well, LSU is going to move on. No doubt about it, because they won the head-to-head matchup. So no way Ole Miss gets in there, but I think Ole Miss can win out the rest of their games throughout the rest of the year. So I'm predicting that this Ole Miss team will finish out 10-2. North Carolina is another team that would consider in a playoff contender. North Carolina is definitely heading to the ACC championship. They had a tough game though against Wake Forest. I mean, that game was pretty tough from the get-go, but they finished out that game pretty strong. This offense is really explosive for North Carolina. This is the best offense I've seen North Carolina in a long time, and I think this team can really, make Clemson, a little bit sloppy. I think, North Carolina will match Clemson pretty well in the ACC championship. I mean, how that game goes, I don't really know, because I have to see, these last couple weeks for these two teams. What if they lose, though? What if they lose a game in the regular season? I mean, North Carolina could go 10-2. Of course, Clemson can go 10-2 as well. But both of these teams' losses, they have both lost to Notre Dame. So it's going to be a pretty even battle between those two teams when the ACC championship comes around. Oregon is another team that, is trying to fight for that Pac-12 championship spot. They're pretty much out of the playoff contention. I was really focusing on this Oregon team to be a playoff contender at the end of the year. Now with that loss to Washington, that's pretty much out of reach. But I think this is still a good Oregon team that can go into a New Year's Six bowl game at the end of the year. I mean, it's going to be a big drop-off where they're going to be ranked in the college football playoff rankings. We don't really know because those rankings are going to come out tomorrow. Penn State at number 11. Penn State's another team that took care of business this weekend. This is a good Penn State team. I'm saying they're going to win out for the rest of the year. I know they got Michigan State in the last game of the schedule. They get that game at home, but, they should roll over in that game. Michigan State hasn't been good this year. But Penn State, this is a team that just keeps rolling and rolling. I thought the Maryland game would be kind of a tough one, kind of a trap game for them, but, they took care of business in that game. So Penn State pretty much, the third best team in the Big Ten East. All right, 6 through 10 now. I mean, there's a big change here to the top 10. Utah at number 10, Clemson at number 9. Utah is a team that, I still don't consider to be behind USC. I mean, honestly, Utah got that win in the regular season. Maybe the AP poll and the College Football Playoff Committee just cares about the overall record, perhaps, but it just don't make any sense whatsoever. I think Utah is just not getting the respect that they need. Clemson took care of business against Louisville. Pretty much a tough game there. I mean, the defense played pretty well, but, Clemson, this is a team that, is way behind in the playoff race. I mean, they have to get past an Alabama team. They also have to get past USC, which probably won't happen. LSU is another team that, they could pass, but, I don't think Clemson can get there. I don't think if they went out and go 11-1, I mean, they're probably not going to get there at all. So I think Clemson won't really, be there in the college football playoff, at the end of the year, even with one loss, and also finishing out the year at, 12-1. I don't think it will happen. I don't think Clemson will get in the playoff, but it's going to come down to those top 4 teams. I mean, honestly, Georgia will win out, I think, for the rest of the year. Ohio State and Michigan still have to play each other. And then also, TCU still has to play Baylor, which it's going to be a pretty tough game. And then, of course, you have you have Tennessee. You have Tennessee that can win out for the rest of the year, and they could probably get in. So it's going to be a tough race for Clemson to get to the end of the college football playoff rankings. Alabama at number 8, big win against Ole Miss. Finally got that win. I mean, Alabama's a team that, has to get back on track, and I think they did there with that Ole Miss win. I think they can win out for the rest of the year. They shouldn't really have any problems with Auburn. I mean, Auburn's pretty terrible this year. I know they got a win against Texas A&M, but it wasn't a solid win. I mean, it's not a ranked team at all. So, I mean, Texas A&M's pretty much horrible this year. USC at number 7. This is a team that, coming off a win against Colorado, I mean, they play a weak schedule. They still have to play UCLA, though, which I think that's an upset alert type game. That's a game that I think USC is going to have a trap game in. And I think, UCLA can pull off an upset. I think they can, but USC, I think, is just getting all the respect in the committee right now. Remember, they were ranked in the top 10 in the first playoff rankings ahead of Utah, and that was back-to-back weeks as well. They were ranked ahead of Utah. It just doesn't make any sense considering Utah obviously beat them in the regular season. And like I said, the Pac-12 teams are fighting for that first and second place spot. I said USC, Utah, Oregon, and of course UCLA. So I mean, all these teams are fighting for it. Maybe Washington could get in that conversation. You never know, but the Pac-12 is really wide open. LSU at number 6. This is another team that just keeps getting better and better. I knew they would move up to number 6 because of the loss that Oregon had, of course, to Washington. And I think LSU can make the playoff at the end of the year, but it just depends on what Tennessee does, what TCU does as well. Maybe they get in as a 4th seed. Maybe they get in, Tennessee gets in as a 3 seed, and then, of course, LSU would get in as a 4th seed. If, TCU were to lose the Big 12 championship, LSU could probably get in. Maybe they win the SEC championship, but it's going to really come down to those final 2 weeks because we have a couple weeks left of the college football season. All right, to the top 5 now. Not much of a change to the top 5. Other than it's just Tennessee, TCU, Michigan, Ohio State, and Georgia. Tennessee took care of business against Missouri, scored 66 points. If you look at that game, Tennessee had over 700 yards of total offense in that game. I mean, how crazy is that? How crazy is that considering Tennessee just come off a loss to Georgia this past weekend? Yes, it wasn't their best game, but this is a dominant Tennessee offense. I mean, this is just one of the best offenses in the country. Hendon Hooker played pretty solid at quarterback, and that was their last game in Neyland Stadium. Tennessee's final 2 road games are to South Carolina, which that could be a tough game a little bit considering it's on the road, and then Vanderbilt on the road, which is coming off a win against Kentucky on the road. But Tennessee, I think, should finish out the year at 11-1. TCU, it wasn't really a solid win against Texas. I mean, it was a short-scoring game, probably the worst game of the weekend in the Big 12, but TCU is still there at number 4 regardless. Michigan and Ohio State still undefeated. These are the 4 remaining teams that are undefeated: Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, and TCU. Let's talk about Michigan. Michigan obviously still rolling on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, that team is just good. I think this is a team that can really compete with Ohio State on the road. And if you look at it, Ohio State has not played a really tough offense this season. Maybe Penn State was their toughest competition, but I mean, Michigan is probably, the toughest offense that Ohio State's going to be playing this year. And then for Michigan, it's going to be the toughest defense that Michigan's played all year. It's going to be a back and forth game. I mean, when these two teams step out on the field in a couple weeks, it's going to be a hard game to predict. I mean, like I said, I think Ohio State just wins because of home field advantage, but I mean, it's going to really be a tough game to really predict. Ohio State took care of business against Indiana. Not much to talk about them. And then Georgia comes in here at number 1. The most dominant team in the nation, perhaps. And also, I mean, pretty much the top dominant defense as well in the country. Not really much to talk about all these 4 teams, considering they took care of business in their games. But that concludes the AP Top 25 poll heading into week number 12 of the 2022 college football season, and we have a couple more weeks to go in the 2022 season. It's going to be a wide open race, and the playoff rankings do come out tomorrow. I will make a video on the college football playoff rankings and give my reaction to those rankings on Wednesday. And stay tuned here for more on the Lucas Ross Sports Channel.